Circle 1, Limbo, the virtuous pagans. Summary. Dante wakes to find himself across Acheron. The poets are now on the brink of hell itself, which Dante conceives as a great funnel-shaped cave lying below the northern hemisphere, with its bottom point at the Earth's center. Around this great circular depression runs a series of ledges, each of which Dante calls a circle. Each circle is assigned to the punishment of one category of sin. As soon as Dante's strength returns, the poets begin to cross the first circle. Here they find the virtuous pagans. They were born without the light of Christ's revelation, and therefore they cannot come into the light of God, but they are not tormented. Their only pain is that they have no hope. Ahead of them, Dante sees a great dome of light, and a voice trumpets through the darkness, welcoming Virgil back. For this is his eternal place in hell. Immediately, the great poets of all time appear: Homer, Horace, Ovid, and Lucan. They greet Virgil, and they make Dante a sixth in their company. With them, Dante enters the citadel of human reason, and sees before his eyes the master souls of pagan antiquity gathered on a green, and illuminated by the radiance of human reason. This is the highest state man can achieve without God, and the glory of it dazzles Dante, but he knows also that it is nothing compared to the glory of God. A monstrous clap of thunder broke apart the swoon that stuffed my head. Like one awakened by violent hands, I leaped up with a start, and having risen, rested, and renewed, I studied out the landmarks of the gloom to find my bearings there as best I could. And I found I stood on the very brink of the valley called the Dolorous Abyss, the desolate chasm where rolls the thunder of hell's eternal cry, so depthless, deep, and nebulous and dim that, stare as I might into its frightful pit, it gave me back no feature and no bottom. Death pale, the poet spoke. Now let us go into the blind world waiting here below us. I will lead the way, and you shall follow. And I, sick with alarm at his new pallor, cried out, How can I go this way, when you, who are my strength in doubt, turn pale with terror? And he, The pain of these below us here drains the color from my face for pity, and leaves this pallor you mistake for fear. Now let us go, for a long road awaits us. So he entered, and so he led me into the first circle and ledge of the abyss. No tortured wailing rose to greet us here, but sounds of sighing rose from every side, sending a tremor through the timeless air, a grief breathed out of untormented sadness, the passive state of those who dwelled apart, men, women, children, a dim and endless congress. And the master said to me, You do not question what souls these are that suffer here before you? I wish you to know before you travel on that these were sinless, and still their merits fail, for they lacked baptism's grace, which is the door of the true faith you were born to. Their birth fell before the age of the Christian mysteries, and so they did not worship God's Trinity in fullest duty. I am one of these. For such defects are we lost, those spared the fire and suffering hell in one affliction only, that without hope we live on in desire. I thought how many worthy souls there were suspended in that limbo, and a weight closed on my heart for what the noblest suffer. Instruct me, master, and most noble sir, I prayed him then, better to understand the perfect creed that conquers every error. Has any by his own or another's merit gone ever from this place to blessedness? He sensed my inner question and answered it. I was still new to this estate of tears when a mighty one descended here among us, crowned with the sign of his victorious years. He took from us the shade of our first parent, of Abel, his pure son, of ancient Noah, of Moses, the bringer of law, the obedient, Father Abraham, David, the king, Israel with his father and his children, Rachel, the holy vessel of his blessing, and many more he chose for elevation among the elect. And before these you must know, no human soul has ever won salvation. We had not paused as he spoke, but held our road and passed meanwhile beyond oppressive souls crowded about like trees in a thick wood, and we had not traveled far from where I woke, when I made out a radiance before us that struck away a hemisphere of dark. We were still some distance back in the long night, yet near enough that I half saw, half sensed what quality of souls lived in that light. O ornament of wisdom and of art, what souls are these whose merit lights their way even in hell? What joy sets them apart? And he to me, the signature of honor they left on earth is recognized in heaven and wins them ease in hell out of God's favor. And as he spoke, a voice rang on the air. Honor the Prince of Poets, the soul and glory that went from us returns. He is here, he is here. The cry ceased and the echo passed from hearing. I saw 4 mighty presences come toward us with neither joy nor sorrow in their bearing. Note well, my master said as they came on, that soul that leads the rest with sword in hand, as if he were their captain and champion. It is Homer, singing master of the earth. Next after him is Horace, the satirist. Ovid is third, and Lucan is the fourth. Since all of these have part in the high name, the voice proclaimed, calling me Prince of Poets, the honor that they do me honors them. So I saw gathered at the edge of light the masters of that highest school whose song outsoars all others like an eagle's flight. And after that they had talked together a while, they turned and welcomed me most graciously, at which I saw my approving master smile. And they honored me far beyond courtesy, for they included me in their own number, making me 6th in that high company. So we moved toward the light, and as we passed we spoke of things as well omitted here as it was sweet to touch on there. At last we reached the base of a great citadel, circled by 7 towering battlements, and by a sweet brook flowing round them all. This we passed over as if it were firm ground. Through 7 gates I entered with those sages, and came to a green meadow blooming round. There, with a solemn and majestic poise, stood many people gathered in the light, speaking infrequently and with muted voice. Past that enameled green we 6 withdrew into a luminous and open height, from which each soul among them stood in view. And there, directly before me on the green, the master souls of time were shown to me. I glory in the glory I have seen. Electra stood in a great company, among whom I saw Hector and Aeneas, and Caesar in armor with his falcon's eye. I saw Camilla and the queen Amazon across the field. I saw the Latian king seated there with his daughter by his throne, and the good Brutus who overthrew the Tarquin, Lucrezia, Julia, Marcia, and Cornelia, and by himself apart, the Saladin. And raising my eyes a little, I saw on high Aristotle, the master of those who know, ringed by the great souls of philosophy. All wait upon him for their honor and his. I saw Socrates and Plato at his side, before all others there. Democritus, who ascribes the world to chance, Diogenes, and with him there Thales, Anaxagoras, Zeno, Heraclitus, Empedocles, and I saw the wise collector and analyst, Dioscorides, I saw Orpheus there, Tully, Linus, Seneca, the moralist, Euclid, the geometer, and Ptolemy, Hippocrates, Galen, Avicenna, and Averroes of the great commentary. I cannot count so much nobility. My longer theme pursues me so that often the word falls short of the reality. The company of 6 is reduced by 4. My master leads me by another road, out of that serenity, to the roar and trembling air of hell. I pass from light into the kingdom of eternal night. 4 notes. Lines 13 and following. Death pale. Virgil is most likely affected here by the return to his own place in hell. The pain of these below, then, line 19, would be the pain of his own group in limbo, the virtuous pagans, rather than the total of hell's suffering. Lines 31 and following, you do not question, a master touch of characterization. Virgil's amour propre is a bit piqued at Dante's lack of curiosity about the position in hell of Virgil's own kind. And it may possibly be, by allegorical extension, that human reason must urge the soul to question the place of reason. The allegorical point is conjectural, but such conjecture is certainly one of the effects inherent in the use of allegory. When well used, the central symbols of the allegory continue indefinitely to suggest new interpretations and shades of meaning. Line 53, a mighty one is Christ. His name is never directly uttered in hell. Line 53, descended here. The legend of the harrowing of hell is apocryphal. It is based on 1 Peter 3, verse 19. He went and preached unto the spirits in prison. The legend is that Christ, as the glory of his resurrection, descended into limbo and took with him to heaven the first human souls to be saved. The event would accordingly have occurred in 33 or 34 AD. Virgil died in 19 BC. Line 102, making me sixth in that high company. Merit and self-awareness of merit may well be a higher thing than modesty. An additional point Dante may well have had in mind, however, is the fact that he saw himself as one pledged to continue in his own times the classic tradition represented by these poets. Lines 103 to 105. These lines amount to a stylistic note. It is good style to omit this discussion, since it would digress from the subject, and moreover, his point is already made. Every great narrator tends to tell his story from climax to climax. There are times, on the other hand, when Dante delights in digression. See general note to Canto 20. Line 106, a great citadel. The most likely allegory is that the citadel represents philosophy, that is, human reason without the light of God, surrounded by 7 walls which represent the 7 liberal arts, or the 7 sciences, or the 7 virtues. Note that human reason makes a light of its own, but that it is a light in darkness and forever separated from the glory of God's light. The sweet brook flowing round them all has been interpreted in many ways. Clearly fundamental, however, is the fact that it divides those in the citadel, those who wish to know, from those in the outer darkness. Line 109, as if it were firm ground. Since Dante still has his body, and since all others in hell are incorporeal shades, there is a recurring narrative problem in the Inferno, and through the rest of the Commedia. How does flesh act in contact with spirit? In the Purgatorio, Dante attempts to embrace the spirit of Casella, and his arms pass through him as if he were empty air. In the third circle, below Canto 6, Dante steps on some of the spirits lying in the slush, and his foot passes right through them. The original lines offer several possible readings, of which I have preferred this one. And at other times, Virgil, also a spirit, picks Dante up and carries him bodily. It is clear, too, that Dante means the spirits of hell to be weightless. When Virgil steps into Flacius's bark, Canto 8, it does not settle into the water, but it does when Dante's living body steps aboard. There is no narrative reason why Dante should not sink into the waters of this stream, and Dante follows no fixed rule in dealing with such phenomena, often suiting the physical action to the allegorical need. Here, the mote probably symbolizes some requirement, the will to know, which he and the other poets meet without difficulty. The inhabitants of the citadel. They fall into 3 main groups. 1, the heroes and heroines. All of these, it must be noted, were associated with the Trojans and their Roman descendants. The Electra Dante mentions here is not the sister of Orestes, but the daughter of Atlas, and the mother of Dardanus, the founder of Troy. Number 2, the philosophers. Most of this group is made up of philosophers whose teachings were, at least in part, acceptable to church scholarship. Democritus, however, who ascribed the world to chance, would clearly be an exception. The group is best interpreted, therefore, as representing the highest achievements of human reason, unaided by divine love. Plato and Aristotle, through a considerable part of the Middle Ages, Plato was held to be the fountainhead of all scholarship, but in Dante's time practically all learning was based on Aristotelian theory, as interpreted through the many commentaries. Linus, the Italian is Lino, and for it some commentators read Livio or Livy. Number 3, the naturalists. They are less well known today. In Dante's time, their place in scholarship more or less corresponded to the role of the theoretician and historian of science in our universities. Avicenna, his major work was in the 11th century, and Averroes, 12th century, were Arabian philosophers and physicians, especially famous in Dante's time for their commentaries on Aristotle. The great commentary has the force of a title. i.e., the great commentary as distinguished from many lesser commentaries.